Welcome to the Old Lumens channel again. I think this is installment 3 of modding a HD2010. I'm going to talk about the pill now, and this mod is going to be based on the fact that you do not have a copper replacement pill and you're dealing with the original pill. The original pill, of course, is aluminum, and the shelf for the LED is about 1.5 millimeters thick. So, I used to say, well, that's not enough to dissipate heat out to the outside of the aluminum. And then I would add pieces of copper inside. But, the problem with that is when I put those pieces of copper inside, usually I just adhere them with the Arctic alumina. I'm not really doing anything, because if they aren't a super tight fit, they're not accomplishing anything. I think I'm accomplishing something, but in reality, it really isn't. I'm not going to worry about it. This is what we have. We have an aluminum pill. The only thing that I'm going to do to help with the heat is I'm going to use a copper star. So I have a sink pad copper star, and I will be using that, and I will be using an XML2. Now I have some XML2s on this star that were taken out of a light, and I will use one of them. They're cool white, which is better for a thrower anyways. It appears to our eyes to throw better. Okay, so I'm going to reflow and remove these, and then reflow onto a star. And I'm going to use the East 092 driver that came with the light. And these wires are very, very thin. They may be 28 or even 30 gauge wires. I'm going to replace them with 22 gauge wires. And I want to I just want to talk about the wires a little bit. The two types of wire that I use are what's called a Teflon coated silver plated wire. They're copper wires. There's usually, I guess they're 19 strand usually. They're copper wires that have been silver plated, and they have a Teflon coating on top. The Teflon, you can take your soldering gun and just about touch them, and it doesn't melt the Teflon. So it's really good for that purpose, to protect the wires. Okay. Unfortunately, they're very stiff. Okay. So in some situations, you do not want this. If those wires are going to have to flex, like when you have to put something together, it doesn't work too good, because you'll end up breaking the wires. Or you don't have the room, because you can't force them into the position, and twist. All right, it doesn't work out too well. The other type of wire that's used quite a bit is a silicone coating, okay, for the wire instead of Teflon. Now, silicone will flex a lot better and come just about back to where it is, and you can twist it up, into a ball, and it works a lot better. Most everything that comes to us is silicone coating. All these wires are silicone because they just are so flexible, okay, easy to work with. The thing about them is there's a lot more strands in here. I haven't counted, but I'm going to say maybe 50 strands, okay, or more. The problem that I have with that is that, let's say these are both 18 gauge wire. This 18 gauge wire will pull more amps than this 18 gauge wire will. The reason being that DC electricity goes through the wire. Okay, so the larger the diameter of the single wire, the more current it can take. And easier, with less resistance. The more current it can take with less resistance. Okay, so this wire, even though it's 18 gauge, will have less resistance and overall more amps than this wire at 18 gauge. I'm not going to say overall more amps. I'm going to say less resistance. Current will flow easier because the diameter of the individual wires is larger. Okay. But again, it's a give and take. You know, it's all a give and take, and the silicone wire is so much more flexible and easier to use. Now, in this situation, these wires are going to be, you know, very, very short, just a few millimeters long. They're going to go straight up into the holes to go to the star, and I'm going to end up using Teflon coated wire, the thicker wire. In fact, I may even possibly use solid. I have some solid Teflon wire, 22 gauge, which means instead of having 9 strands making up 22 gauge, I have 1 strand making up 22 gauge, which gives me less resistance through the path. Okay, so that's a little bit on wires. The reason I use Teflon coated is when I have a situation where I really need to have the wires do a lot of flexing when I put things together and assemble things. But I don't prefer to use that. I prefer the Teflon coated, but they are very stiff. All right, and we'll go back with the rest of it here in a little bit. Okay, so I've got some tools that I'll use for this pill. I have a pair of wire strippers to strip insulation off the wires. I have a couple different pair of needle nose. This is the fine needle nose, and it has smooth jaws, and this is a heavier needle nose, but it has grippy jaws on it. Okay, grippy jaws. You like that? That's cool. That's when I can't remember what to say right. Then I have a pair of cutters. Okay, I also have a pair of tweezers here, which I will be using when I do some reflow on the LEDs to handle those. I have my little trusty little pick, which I'll be using. Then of course I have solder, flux, and the soldering gun is heating up now. First thing I'll be doing, I also have some 2 pieces of 22 gauge solid wire, which I'll be using. And right now I'm just waiting for the soldering iron to heat up so I can go ahead and remove the LEDs off this plate. So we'll get back to that when we're ready to go here. Oh, I also have some alcohol, 91% isopropyl alcohol, and some steel wool, and I'm going to clean this LED shelf. I'm going to use alcohol to clean off the grunge from the adhesive, and then I'm going to use some steel wool just to polish it up a little bit too. So I just take the alcohol and clean that surface as I can, and I take a little steel wool and put the steel wool in there and just rub that down in this inside there. Okay, clean that up a little bit, and I might as well go ahead and hit the threads too, because remember, that's what I do with all the threads. I rub them down a little bit to smooth them out and take the rough spots off them. So I'll hit those threads while I'm at it, and the interior threads as well. Okay. There's also down inside, there's a lot of slag from the drilling the holes, and I may try to clean those out. I'm not sure if I do. I'll show you how I do that. But anyways, I'll take the alcohol again and try to clean everything up, get it ready to go, and clean the inside too, clean it out. Easier to work with clean parts than it is dirty parts. It does look like that there's an awful lot of junk inside of there, so I got to get something to take care of that. Okay, so there's bits and pieces of aluminum in these holes, and I usually use a razor knife if there's room, because you can just sort of trim around the edges, you know. There's not a lot of room in here. You can try a little screwdriver to get those pieces off. Anything that you can to try to get that slag out of there, the little pieces there from drilling. Usually that's from drilling a hole too fast, which in an industrial setting probably I wouldn't doubt they do, but whatever works to help take the roughness off them so that the burrs won't cut into your wires. Okay, Looks like I might do a little bit more here. Yeah. Okay. Alright, well I think that'll work, and I'm cleaning off any adhesive that's inside the holes. Make sure the holes are nice and clean. Yeah. Okay. Looks pretty good, so as soon as we get finished heating up here, we'll go ahead and work on the rest of it. Okay, so now I'm going to remove the XML2 LEDs off the star. I have my soldering gun. I know people use a reflow plate. That's cool. I'm too lazy to do that. I just want it done. And so I put some solder onto my soldering gun, and I try to put it on the underside right here and heat that star up. Alright? And when it gets hot enough, I can just lift the LED right off of that star. And it's going to take a little bit because it's a pretty big star. So we'll see how we go here. There we go. Okay. I've lifted it right off. I'll set it off to the side. I have two more to do, but that's how I do it. I just put a little solder on that soldering iron, hold it down underneath. The solder helps to make contact with the aluminum plate. Heats it up pretty darn good fast. Alright. And we'll go ahead and do the other two here. Okay, so I have my 3 LEDs over here. They're all removed off the plate. I have my sink pad, and this sink pad copper star has a depression in the center where they've pushed to press up the center pad in it. And what I do is I just take toss it in my little vise, my squeaky little vise, and I'm just going to solder that depression. Oh no, oh no. Yes, I certainly am. Solder's fine. It works fine. I put some flux in there, and I'll clean off my tip, and I'll lay a little solder on my soldering iron. There we go. And then I'll just take and set it on here, wait for it to heat up, and once it heats up, it'll flow onto the star. Okay, there you go. Alright, that'll work. I'm going to let that cool for a second and come back to it. Okay, on the other side of the star, I'm going to go ahead and put solder on the pads. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little flux. And I got to put my hand on this, because if I take my hand away, I don't think you can see anything except white. I probably should have used the other star that was red color. So I'm going to go ahead and put a little flux on all these pads. Okay. And I don't use a solder mask and hot air solder. I've never done it. Probably never will do it. I just do it this way. It works for me. I'll get my soldering gun here, soldering iron, and clean the tip real good. And then I'm going to see if I can't, I'm going to put some solder on the tip. Now usually I don't quite do it this way, but the problem is you can't see what's going on. So I'm going to have to try to do this without burning my hand, but I'm just going to touch down, put some solder on that, a little more solder on that. Let's see here, a little more solder on this. Okay, then I need to put solder on all 3 of the pads. Now the outer ones, you don't want a lot of solder. Okay, so I'm going to try to put a little solder on those, on the outer pads. Hope you can see this. And then I got to put a little solder on that center pad, and that's going to take longer to heat because that's direct copper. So it's got to heat the whole star up. Okay, so I'm going to have to hold it a little longer until that starts to flow. Okay, there we go. You see the smoke going. And so now that's got solder float in there. Let's see how that looks. I'm gonna put a little more. I'm gonna go for a little too much rather than not enough. Okay, there we go. All right. So I've got the solder on, and the next thing I need to do is I need to put an LED on there and position it. But I want to show you something about these XMLs. And you probably won't be able to see this. The way to know which way you're going to put your XML is, usually people say by the wires. And an XML, so right in mid-stroke I get memory card full. So where was I? On an XML, okay, you look at the wires, and the wires go to the negative side of the star, okay? On an XML2, the wires go to the positive side of the star. I guess that's pretty important because I've soldered them on wrong many a time till I took the time to figure that out. But as I say, XML, the wires face a negative terminal, and XML2, the wires face the positive terminal. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and get this XML2 on this star, and let's see here. Okay, so I think we're ready now. Anyways, we're going to take I use my tweezers. Guess I'll have to hold this to be able to see it. This can be interesting. Take my tweezers and get the LED in there and about where we want, and I may have to align this by moving the camera out of the way so I can see what I'm doing. Okay, that's pretty close, and what I will do is, again, I will take my soldering iron, and put a little solder on it. And then I'll take and heat this pad up, heat the star up until the LED settles down onto the pads. Okay, there it goes right there now. It's settled down. Now, what I'm going to do after that is I'm going to take, real quick like, I'm going to take and try to make sure that I'm centered, and I'm going to squeeze out the excess solder. Yeah, I blow on it to cool it down. Okay, so that's how I do it. I push on the LED on the dome to clean that excess solder out, so I get a good seal and get it down there tight. And now we'll test it out and make sure it works. All right, I've got a 3A battery holder, and I've soldered wires to it, and that way I can touch it to the LED pads to see if it's going to work. There we go. Alright, so now we know that the LED's on the star the way it should be, and we've got to finish off this bottom side, and I'll show you how to do that.